You didn't stumble here by accident. Something deep inside you reached a breaking point. Not the kind that shows up in tears or dramatic breakdowns. More like a slow-burning awareness that's been smoldering beneath the surface for longer than you'd like to admit. And right now, in this moment, you can't pretend it away anymore. You can't keep acting like everything's fine when your entire existence feels like you're wearing clothes 3 sizes too small. You're still functioning, still showing up, still performing the version of yourself everyone expects. But the quiet truth is, you're suffocating inside a life that no longer fits who you're becoming. Here's what makes this so disorienting. From the outside, nothing looks broken. You followed the script society handed you. You built stability. You honored commitments. You played the responsible one. You avoided conflict. You became exactly what a well-adjusted person should look like. But underneath all that external success, there's an exhaustion that rest can't touch. Not because something's wrong with you, not because you lack gratitude, but because you've been constructing your entire reality from external validation inward, instead of letting your true self radiate outward. It's like performing in a theater production where everyone applauds your performance, but you've completely forgotten why you auditioned for this role in the first place. Carl Jung identified this phenomenon as the persona, the psychological mask we construct to navigate social survival, to earn acceptance, to belong. Absolutely necessary in certain contexts, yes. But Jung also observed that unconsciously surrendering to an inauthentic existence creates one of the most devastating forms of human suffering, precisely because it happens silently. There's no explosion, no catastrophic loss, no sudden tragedy. You simply dissolve incrementally, fading a little more with each passing day, until you wake up one morning and realize you've been fully present for everyone else's version of who you should be, while remaining completely absent from your own soul's calling. So if you've been experiencing that internal fracturing, that sensation where your authentic self and your constructed identity can no longer maintain the illusion of unity, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. You're not disintegrating randomly. Something profoundly real is attempting to emerge. A deeper layer of your consciousness is essentially declaring, this ends now. We're not sustaining this pattern indefinitely. And the fact that this video appeared in your awareness at this precise moment, that's not coincidental. When your conscious mind exhausts its capacity to provide answers, your unconscious begins planting symbolic markers throughout your lived experience, like a trail guiding you home. An unexpected conversation, a passage in something you're reading that strikes your chest like lightning. A moment of recognition that bypasses logic entirely. A video materializing exactly when you're finally ready to acknowledge what you've been avoiding. Everyone around you wants you to return to normal, as if normal represents health by default, as if normal wasn't the very foundation that created your current sense of constriction. They'll suggest you need time away, a different schedule, medication, some optimization technique, a superficial mindset adjustment. And certainly, those interventions can address surface-level tension. But you recognize that what you're experiencing operates at a completely different depth. This isn't a difficult week passing through. It's a fundamental weariness that emerges when your external life appears functional, while your spirit experiences itself as imprisoned in a space with no windows and no doors. Jung recognized something most people resist hearing. The psyche generates suffering as a catalyst for transformation, not because it seeks to torture you, but because it's attempting to initiate movement when you've become stagnant. When the ego, that aspect of you demanding control and certainty and safety, refuses evolution, the unconscious amplifies its signal. The anxiety that arrives without clear cause, the insomnia that won't respond to any intervention, the irritability that seems disproportionate, the emotional numbness, the waves of sadness that make no logical sense, the persistent feeling that something's off without being able to name it. These aren't necessarily breakdowns in your system. Sometimes they're your internal guidance system trying to get your attention. A fire alarm isn't your adversary. It's the mechanism alerting you that somewhere in the structure, something's burning. Consider this metaphor. Imagine you've been living in a house where one room has been slowly filling with a toxic gas for years, but you've adapted to it so gradually you no longer register the danger. You continue lighting candles in there. You keep preparing meals. You welcome people into this space. You maintain the appearance that everything's perfectly safe. Then one day, your body refuses to cooperate with the denial anymore. Your eyes start burning. Your breathing becomes restricted. Your nervous system begins emergency protocols. Is your physical body malfunctioning? Or is your body finally refusing to participate in the deception? Pain doesn't always arrive as punishment. Sometimes pain is your soul's refusal to continue dying in silence. Now, if you're feeling like you're falling apart, examine that more closely. What's actually fragmenting might not be your core self at all. What's cracking apart is the protective shell you constructed to survive circumstances that required you to be smaller than you are. The version that maintains everyone else's emotional equilibrium. The version that silences itself. The version that agrees when every fiber of your being wants to say no. That armor served a purpose once, but now it's constricting you, like metal that's been welded to your skin and never removed. And here's where this becomes crucial. The pain you're experiencing is actually a threshold. Resist crossing it, and it calcifies into chronic, inescapable suffering. Lean into it with awareness, and it becomes an initiation into a completely different way of existing. Not comfortable in the conventional sense, not pretty or Instagram-worthy, but authentic and necessary, and ultimately liberating. Around this stage of awakening, something starts shifting in your external reality. Not mystical nonsense, more like a recognizable pattern. You begin noticing that precisely the right information keeps appearing at precisely the right time. A book finds you that seems to understand you better than you understand yourself. A piece of music penetrates a part of you that you didn't know was numb. Someone speaks a single sentence that completely reorganizes your internal landscape. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful correlation between internal and external events. Not because the universe is performing magic tricks for your entertainment, but because when your inner world undergoes transformation, your outer reality begins reflecting that shift back to you like water mirroring the sky above it during a storm. Jung also articulated something that should stop you completely. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That statement becomes critically important here, because you're arriving at a juncture where fate stops feeling predetermined. Not because existence suddenly becomes effortless, but because you're beginning to perceive the hidden mechanisms driving your behavioral patterns. The chronic people-pleasing, the terror of disappointing your family, the career you endure because it provides security, the partnership that appears acceptable on paper, but systematically depletes you behind closed doors. The numbing mechanisms you employ to avoid feeling. All those incremental compromises that once resembled maturity, but now feel like acts of self-abandonment. And then fear arrives in full force. Not ordinary nervousness. Fear manifesting as a guardian at the gate. Fear appearing as something ancient and primal stationed at the entrance to your next evolution. Asking, "Are you certain you want to enter here?" Jung described this psychological moment as confronting the inner dragon, the archetypal force that embodies every doubt and every resistance you encounter at the threshold of genuine change. This dragon will attempt to convince you that you're losing your mind. It will suggest you're completely unprepared for what lies ahead. It will project worst-case scenarios with cinematic clarity. It will remind you of every failure you've experienced, every judgment you've endured, every loss you've sustained. Because if you cross this threshold, the version of you constructed purely for survival has to experience symbolic death, and the ego fears symbolic death with greater intensity than it fears continued pain. But here's the paradox, and somewhere deep inside you already understand this. Fear doesn't always function as a prohibition. Sometimes fear operates as a navigational tool. Fear points directly toward the location where your unlived life has been waiting for you all along. There's an ancient wisdom found across multiple traditions, expressed in different languages but communicating the identical truth. Where you are most afraid to go, there lies your greatest treasure. Jung would describe it as a portal guarded by terror, a sacred threshold, and the only path forward requires moving through it rather than around it. Nobody feels completely ready when they make this crossing. Nobody takes the leap with every detail planned and every outcome guaranteed. People leap because they finally become exhausted from performing, exhausted from contracting themselves, exhausted from inhabiting a life that makes them physically ill. You don't require certainty to begin. You require honesty. The kind of raw honesty that says, "I cannot predict what comes next, but I absolutely cannot remain here." Here's the truth that's simultaneously the hardest to accept and the most liberating to embrace. Nobody is arriving to rescue you. Not a romantic partner, not an authority figure, not a spiritual teacher, not a perfect methodology, not even content like this. Waiting for external rescue is a childhood enchantment that many adults never break free from. Jung would say, it's the wounded inner child, still hoping someone else will finally make life feel safe and manageable. But you're not that child anymore. You're the one who must choose. Radical responsibility doesn't mean accepting blame for circumstances that were inflicted upon you. It means refusing to remain imprisoned by circumstances that were inflicted upon you. The pain of what happened might not have been your responsibility. The healing that happens from this point forward absolutely is. So if this video found you at the exact moment your soul needed to hear this, treat that as significant. Not with panic or urgency, but with presence. Something in you already knows the old life is ending. The old strategies, the old compromises, the old identity you maintained to keep everything peaceful and acceptable. And you're standing at that invisible boundary where your real life, your true life, begins on the other side of everything you've been afraid to face. But let me take you deeper into something Jung understood that most people never encounter. There's a phenomenon he called enantiodromia, the principle that everything eventually transforms into its opposite when taken to an extreme. Your carefully constructed stability, it's becoming your prison. Your responsible nature, it's becoming your cage. Your ability to keep peace, It's becoming the very thing that's killing your spirit. This is the psyche's way of forcing evolution. When you refuse to change consciously, the unconscious creates conditions so unbearable that change becomes inevitable. What's happening to you right now is what the alchemists called nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution phase where everything you thought was solid begins to liquefy. Ancient spiritual traditions called it the dark night of the soul. Modern psychology might label it a crisis. But what it actually represents is the breakdown of a false structure so that something authentic can emerge. You can't build a new foundation on top of a faulty one. The old has to crumble first. And here's what nobody tells you about this process. The discomfort you're feeling isn't a sign that something's going wrong. It's confirmation that something's finally going right. Your nervous system is waking up from decades of numbing. Your intuition is coming back online after years of being suppressed. Your authentic desires are surfacing after being buried under everyone else's expectations. This is what awakening actually looks like. It's not peaceful meditation and perfect clarity. It's messy and disorienting and uncomfortable because you're literally becoming someone new while the old version of you fights to survive. If this resonates, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to stay connected to this frequency of transformation. The quantum field responds to your state of being, not your state of wanting. Every moment you've spent pretending, every time you've silenced yourself, every instance you've chosen safety over authenticity, you've been collapsing probability waves into a reality that matches that frequency. But the moment you stop participating in the lie, the moment you withdraw your energy from maintaining the false self, the entire field reorganizes around your new state. This isn't metaphor. This is how consciousness interfaces with reality at the quantum level. Think about the observer effect in quantum mechanics. The act of observation collapses the wave function, determining which potential reality becomes actual. You've been observing yourself as small, as limited, as someone who needs to fit in and play it safe. And reality has been faithfully reflecting that observation back to you. But the instant you begin observing yourself as someone who chooses authenticity over approval, as someone who honors their soul over social conditioning, you're literally collapsing different probabilities into form. This is why the discomfort is so intense right now. You're existing in a liminal space between two different frequency states. The old frequency is destabilizing, but the new one hasn't fully anchored yet. You're in the quantum gap, the space between identities, between realities. And in that gap, everything feels uncertain because nothing has solidified yet. But this uncertainty is exactly where your power lives. In uncertainty, all possibilities exist simultaneously. In uncertainty, you're not locked into any predetermined outcome. You're free to choose. Now, what we've explored here barely scratches the surface of how frequency transmission actually works at the quantum level. If you're feeling this pull toward conscious evolution, toward becoming the broadcast rather than searching for the signal, I've documented the complete framework in my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery. It walks you through all 9 master frequencies, from breaking free from survival static to embodying the silent frequency itself, with practices that shift you from unconscious transmission to living as the field. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Here's a practice that will help you navigate this transition. Several times throughout each day, pause and ask yourself this question: am I creating from my past or from my future? Your past self would choose safety, familiarity, the known path. Your future self, the one that's trying to emerge right now, chooses alignment, authenticity, truth, even when it's terrifying. Every choice you make is either reinforcing the old pattern or strengthening the new one. There's no neutral ground anymore, and pay attention to what Jung called the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold opposites in tension until a third thing emerges. You don't have to choose between security and authenticity, between responsibility and freedom, between honoring others and honoring yourself. The transcendent function creates a new possibility that transcends the either-or thinking that's kept you trapped. But it only emerges when you stop trying to resolve the tension prematurely, when you can sit in the discomfort of not knowing how both things can be true simultaneously. Your body holds wisdom your mind hasn't accessed yet. Notice where you feel constriction when you're living from the false self. Notice where you feel expansion when you act from authenticity. Your nervous system knows the difference even when your thoughts are confused. That tightness in your chest, that shallow breathing, that tension in your shoulders, those are signals that you're betraying yourself somehow. That ease in your body, that deeper breath, that sense of rightness, those are confirmations that you're aligned with truth. Let's go even deeper into what's happening at the energetic level. Every version of yourself you've ever performed exists as a standing wave pattern in the quantum field. The responsible one, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the one who never asks for help. These aren't just psychological patterns. They're actual energetic structures that you've been feeding with your attention, your emotional investment, your behavioral repetition. And those structures have been organizing your reality, attracting certain people, creating certain circumstances, maintaining certain limitations. But here's what changes everything. The moment you withdraw your energy from those old patterns, they begin to collapse. Not metaphorically, actually collapse at the quantum level. The field doesn't maintain structures that consciousness is no longer animating. This is why the transformation feels so destabilizing. You're not just changing your mind about who you are. You're literally deconstructing the energetic architecture that's been holding your entire reality together. And in that deconstruction, there's a period where you feel like you're floating in space with nothing to hold on to. The old structures are dissolving, but the new ones haven't formed yet. This is what mystics call the void, the space between death and rebirth. And it's terrifying because your ego interprets it as annihilation. But it's not annihilation. It's the creative void, the quantum field in its pure potential state, before anything has been made manifest. What you're being invited into right now is conscious creation from the void. Not trying to fix or improve the old you. Not trying to optimize a failing system, but allowing the old structures to completely dissolve so that something entirely new can form. This requires a level of surrender that most people never access because it feels too much like dying. And in a sense, it is death. The death of who you thought you were. The death of the identity you've been defending. The death of the life you've been trying to make work. Think about how a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't just grow wings and fly away. It completely dissolves into liquid. Its entire structure breaks down into what's called imaginal cells, undifferentiated cells that contain the blueprint for the butterfly. Then those imaginal cells reorganize according to a completely different pattern, and something entirely new emerges. You're in the chrysalis right now. You're dissolving, and it feels like you're dying because the caterpillar part of you is dying. But the butterfly is already forming in the imaginal realm. in the quantum potential, waiting for you to trust the process enough to let the dissolution complete. Here's where it gets really interesting from a quantum perspective. The butterfly already exists as a probability wave in the field. It's not something you have to create from scratch. It's something you have to allow. The problem is, as long as you're gripping onto the caterpillar identity, trying to preserve even pieces of it, you're blocking the emergence of what's already trying to be born through you. This is why resistance makes the process so painful. Every time you try to go back to the old normal, every time you attempt to make the old patterns work just a little longer, you're fighting against an evolutionary impulse that's stronger than your conscious will. The psyche knows where you need to go even when your mind is still arguing about whether you should go there. The soul has already made the choice. Your ego just hasn't accepted it yet. And here's something crucial about timing. You didn't arrive at this breaking point randomly. There are astrological transits, solar cycles, collective consciousness shifts, personal development arcs that all had to align to create this exact moment. Your soul has been orchestrating this for longer than you realize. All those uncomfortable situations over the past months or years, they were preparing you. All those people who triggered you, they were showing you where you weren't free yet. All those disappointments and losses, they were clearing space for what's coming. Nothing has been random. Nothing has been wasted. Every experience has been part of an intelligence far greater than your conscious understanding. And that intelligence has brought you to this precise threshold at this exact moment, because this is when you're finally ready. Not comfortable, not certain, but ready in the deeper sense. Ready because you've exhausted every alternative. Ready because staying the same has become more painful than changing. Ready because something in you has shifted at a level your conscious mind can't quite articulate, but your soul absolutely recognizes. Take a moment right now and comment below with this exact phrase: "My past life is over. My true life begins now." Don't think about it, don't edit it, just write it. This isn't a casual comment. This is you making a declaration to the quantum field, creating a conscious interruption in the loop you've been stuck in. This is you signaling to your own unconscious that you're ready to cross the threshold. The transformation you're undergoing isn't going to look like what you expect. The new life emerging won't be a slightly improved version of the old one. It's going to be fundamentally different, because you're becoming fundamentally different. The things that used to matter won't matter in the same way. The things you used to fear won't have the same power. The people you used to try to please won't have access to you in the same way. Everything reorganizes when you change at this depth, and you need to understand something about the integration phase that comes after the dissolution. You can't just destroy the old and immediately inhabit the new. There's a period of reconstruction where you're building a life from the inside out instead of the outside in. This takes time. This requires patience with yourself. You're learning to trust your own guidance instead of seeking validation externally. You're learning to feel what's true instead of thinking your way to truth. You're learning to choose discomfort in service of growth instead of comfort in service of stagnation. During this reconstruction phase, you'll be tested repeatedly. The old patterns will tempt you back. Familiar situations will arise that used to trigger your automatic responses. People from your past will appear offering you the chance to play the old role again. These aren't setbacks. They're confirmations. The universe is checking whether you're serious about this transformation or whether you were just temporarily uncomfortable. Every time you choose differently than you would have chosen before, you're anchoring the new pattern more deeply. Every time you honor your truth, even when it would be easier to fall back into the familiar, you're sending a signal to the quantum field that this change is permanent. Drop a comment sharing one pattern you're consciously choosing to release, or one truth you're finally honoring that you've been suppressing. Your sharing creates ripples in the collective field that support others in their own breaking points. Let me tell you about the role of initiation in this process. In ancient cultures, when someone was ready to move from one stage of life to another, they underwent initiations. These were structured experiences designed to facilitate the death of the old identity and the birth of the new. Modern society has abandoned this wisdom. We expect people to transform themselves without any support, without any acknowledgement of the gravity of what they're going through, without any recognition that they're dying and being reborn. But the psyche still needs initiation. It still needs rituals of transition. It still needs to mark the threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. This is why creating conscious practices during this time is so important. Not complicated spiritual practices necessarily, simple things, burning something that represents the old life, writing a letter to your former self and releasing it, creating a daily practice that the new you does, but the old you never would have. These acts serve as psychic markers that help your unconscious register that a real transition is occurring. And here's something about energy that you need to understand viscerally. Your old life was held together by a specific energetic frequency. Every relationship, every situation, every circumstance in that old life matched that frequency. When you change your frequency, everything that was resonant with the old one becomes dissonant. This is why relationships fall away during transformation. This is why jobs that felt stable suddenly become intolerable. This is why entire sections of your life can collapse when you shift. Not because something's wrong, because the energetic foundation has changed, and the old structures can't maintain themselves on the new frequency. People will notice this change in you even if you don't say anything. They'll sense that something's different. Some will be drawn to it. Others will be repelled by it. Some will ask what's happened to you, genuinely curious. Others will tell you you've changed in a tone that makes it clear they don't approve. Your frequency change is activating their own internal dissonance. Your choice to live authentically is challenging their choice to keep performing. This isn't your problem to fix. Let them have their response. You keep choosing truth. Now let's talk about what Jung called the shadow, because this is absolutely central to the transformation you're undergoing. The shadow is everything you've repressed, denied, hidden, disowned about yourself in order to be acceptable. All your rage, your selfishness, your ambition, your desire, your wildness, your power. You stuffed those things down, locked them away, pretended they didn't exist, because at some point you learned that those qualities would get you rejected or punished or abandoned. But here's the paradox. The very things you've hidden in your shadow are the things that contain your power. The very qualities you've denied are the ones you need to reclaim in order to become whole. The transformation you're going through requires integration of the shadow, not continued repression of it. This means allowing yourself to feel the anger you've been suppressing for years. This means admitting the desires you've pretended you don't have. This means claiming the power you've been deflecting onto others. Shadow work isn't pretty. It's not spiritual in the sanitized, acceptable way. It's raw and uncomfortable and often ugly. You'll discover parts of yourself you don't like. You'll have to admit truths that shame you. You'll face the ways you've manipulated, controlled, avoided, betrayed yourself and others. This is necessary. You can't become whole by continuing to reject half of who you are. You have to turn toward what you've been running from and integrate it. And when you do this, when you stop exiling parts of yourself into the shadow, something remarkable happens. The energy you've been using to maintain the repression becomes available for creation. The vitality that's been locked in the shadow comes flooding back into your conscious life. You become more alive, more present, more powerful. Not power over others, power to create, to choose, to live from your center instead of your conditioning. There's another dimension to this that connects directly to the quantum field. Your shadow doesn't just exist in your personal unconscious. It exists as a suppressed possibility in the quantum field surrounding you. Every time you deny a part of yourself, you're collapsing the wave function in a way that eliminates certain potential realities. When you reclaim your shadow, you're reopening access to possibilities that were previously unavailable. This is why people often report that their entire lives reorganize after doing deep shadow work. They're not just psychologically different. They're accessing different probability streams in the quantum field. If what you're experiencing here is resonating, if something in this transmission is touching a place in you that's been waiting to be acknowledged, then I invite you to subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this movement of people who are choosing consciousness over comfort, authenticity over approval, truth over performance. This community is where we hold space for each other's transformations, where we remind each other that the discomfort is part of the process, where we celebrate the courage it takes to choose differently. The more of us who commit to this path of radical authenticity, the more the collective field shifts. You breaking free from your conditioning doesn't just liberate you, it sends ripples through the quantum field that make it easier for others to break free as well. Your transformation is never just personal. It's always contributing to the collective evolution. Let's address something practical, because transformation isn't just abstract consciousness work. It has to translate into how you actually live. The decisions you make, the boundaries you set, the ways you spend your time and energy. And this is where most people struggle, because the gap between the internal shift and the external life can feel overwhelming. You might have a job that represents the old frequency, relationships built on the old identity, living situations that reflected who you were, not who you're becoming, financial obligations created by past choices. And the question becomes, how do I honor this transformation while still living in a reality structured by my old life? First, understand that you don't have to blow everything up at once. Dramatic external changes sometimes accompany internal transformation, but they don't have to. What matters more than changing everything immediately is bringing consciousness to everything. This means being present with the misalignment you're feeling instead of numbing it. Acknowledging the truth of where you are instead of pretending. Making small choices that honor your emerging authenticity, even while the larger structures of your life are still transitioning. Maybe you can't quit your job today, but you can stop performing enthusiasm you don't feel. You can set one new boundary. You can speak one truth you would have hidden before. These micro choices accumulate. They build momentum. They send signals to your unconscious and to the quantum field that you're serious about this change. And those signals start attracting opportunities, opening pathways. creating synchronicities that support your transition in ways you couldn't have planned. Second, trust the timing. Your soul knows the difference between the timing that serves your evolution and the timing your ego wants, because it's desperate for the discomfort to end. Sometimes you have to sit in the in-between space longer than you'd prefer. Not because the universe is punishing you, because there are things you need to learn, integrate, embody in this liminal space that you can't access once you're fully in the new life. The discomfort is teaching you something essential. Stay curious about what it's trying to show you. Third, recognize that completion is part of transformation. Before you can fully step into the new, you often need to complete things with the old. This doesn't mean you have to finish everything perfectly. It means you need to bring conscious closure. Have the conversations you've been avoiding. Release the resentments you've been carrying. Grieve what needs to be grieved. Thank what needs to be thanked. These acts of completion create energetic release that allows the new to enter more fully. The people in your life will respond to your transformation in revealing ways. Some will celebrate your emergence. Others will resist it, sometimes violently, because your change threatens their own comfortable patterns. They've been relating to your false self, and they have investments in keeping you playing that role. When you stop performing, they'll tell you you're being selfish, irresponsible, that you're changing for the worse. What they're actually saying is, your growth is making me uncomfortable with my own stagnation. Let them be uncomfortable. That's their work, not yours. You might lose people during this transition. You might lose opportunities that were never actually aligned with your truth. You might lose versions of yourself that you thought were permanent. Loss is part of this process. But what you're losing is already dead. You're just finally allowing yourself to acknowledge the death and grieve it instead of carrying the corpse around, pretending it's still alive. And something else will start happening that might frighten you at first. You'll begin to see through the collective trance. You'll notice how many people are living the exact same pattern you're breaking free from. Walking through life asleep, performing roles, maintaining appearances, dying incrementally while calling it living. You'll see it everywhere once you wake up to it in yourself. And you might feel angry that nobody told you, that the entire system is designed to keep people compliant and small. That anger is appropriate. Feel it fully. But don't let it make you bitter. Let it fuel your commitment to living differently. This video finding you right now is part of your unconscious guiding you home. But it's not the only sign. Start paying attention to everything that's been trying to get your attention. The recurring dreams, the physical symptoms that doctors can't explain, the same lessons showing up in different situations, the inexplicable attraction to certain ideas or places or people. Your unconscious is far more intelligent than your conscious mind, and it's been leaving you messages in a language that bypasses rational thought. Here's something about the quantum field that will help you understand why your transformation matters beyond your personal life. Consciousness doesn't exist in isolation. Every thought, every feeling, every choice you make creates a ripple in the field that influences the entire system. When you choose authenticity over performance, you're not just changing your life, you're altering the probability patterns available to every other consciousness connected to this field, which is every consciousness in existence. The morphogenetic field, as biologist Rupert Sheldrake described it, means that when one member of a species learns something new, it becomes easier for other members of that species to learn the same thing, even across distance, even without direct contact. Your choice to break free from conditioning doesn't just serve you, it makes it easier for the next person to make the same choice. And the next. And the next. You're creating pathways in consciousness that others will follow. This is why your transformation feels so significant right now. Because it is. You're not just changing yourself, you're participating in the evolution of human consciousness. Every person who wakes up makes it easier for others to wake up. Every person who chooses truth over comfort shifts the collective field toward greater authenticity. You're part of something so much larger than your individual life, and yet it requires your individual commitment to happen. As we move toward the completion of this transmission, I want you to recognize something. You're not going to feel ready. The fear isn't going to disappear before you take the first step. Clarity doesn't arrive before commitment. It arrives because of commitment. You make the choice first, and then the path reveals itself step by step. Your past life, the one built on compromise and conditioning and external validation, that life is already over. You know this. That's why you're here. The you that you've been pretending to be can't sustain itself anymore. The question isn't whether the old life ends. It's already ending. The question is whether you're going to participate consciously in what's being born, or whether you're going to resist and make the process more painful than it needs to be. The universe doesn't give you more than you can handle, but it will give you exactly enough discomfort to force your evolution when you refuse to evolve voluntarily. You've reached that point. The discomfort has reached the threshold where staying the same is more painful than changing. Trust that. Trust that your soul knew exactly what it was doing when it engineered these circumstances. Every spiritual tradition talks about the moment of surrender, when you stop trying to control the transformation and you allow it to move through you. That's where you are right now. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing your grip on who you've been so you can become who you're meant to be. It means trusting the intelligence that's orchestrating this breakdown, that it's also capable of orchestrating your breakthrough. In the final moments here, drop one word in the comments that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing from this point forward. One word that represents your commitment to your new life. This is your energetic signature to the quantum field, your declaration of intent. The field responds to clarity and conviction. Give it both. And if you haven't already, subscribe now. Not just to stay connected to content, but to stay coherent with this frequency of transformation. Subscribe to remain in community with others who understand what you're going through, because they're going through it too. Subscribe to remind yourself daily that you're not alone in this, that choosing truth over comfort is possible, that your new life is already forming in the quantum field, waiting for you to step into it. If this transmission activated something deep within you, consider returning to it tomorrow morning to anchor these frequencies before the world attempts to pull you back into old patterns. And when you feel moved, share this with someone navigating their own threshold moment. That act of sharing doesn't just help them, it deepens your own integration of these principles and creates quantum entanglement between your transformation and theirs, accelerating both. Your past life is over. You can feel it ending. Everything you've been holding on to is loosening its grip. And yes, it's terrifying to let go when you can't see exactly what you're moving toward. But you can feel it too, can't you? Something truer, something more aligned, something that's been waiting for you to become brave enough to claim it. The invisible line you're standing at right now, the one between who you've been and who you're becoming. This is the threshold. Your real life, your authentic life, the one that matches your soul's frequency instead of society's expectations. That life is waiting on the other side of your willingness to step forward even when you're afraid, even when you don't have all the answers, even when everyone around you thinks you're making a mistake. You don't need their permission. You don't need their understanding. You need your own conviction. And if you're still here, still listening, still feeling the truth of this in your body despite your mind's protests, then you already have everything you need to begin. Your new life starts now. Not when you're ready. Not when it's convenient. Not when it's safe. Now, in this moment, with this choice, to honor what's true even when it's uncomfortable, to trust your soul's guidance even when it defies logic, to become who you actually are instead of who you were conditioned to be. The old life is over. Let it die, and step into what's waiting. Now, understanding that your past life is dissolving is one thing, but recognizing who you actually are in the quantum field is what changes everything. Most people breaking free from old patterns still don't realize the magnitude of their true identity operating beyond the physical plane. In the next transmission, we're exposing the quantum architecture of who you really returned as and why certain forces tried to keep you from remembering. This isn't about spiritual concepts anymore. This is about the mechanics of your multidimensional presence that's been hidden from you. Watch it now.